keep it rolling. We're going to start introductions, and I will call out voting members, and you can identify yourself, and then we'll switch to Brian, and he will cover the rest of the introductions because we have a lot of people on call, so we'll cover it a little different. I'm Dale Stein, Chair. Dave, you on board?
It's okay, I'm muted.
Dave? Thing muted. Darren?
Yeah, I'm here, Dale.
Larger drive then to
Erica?
transfer. Pete, what do you want?
Erica is here. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Erica. See you good. Brian, Dave not on yet?
Yeah, definitely. Like there's some we just need to say. There's some shit in there like there's Joe stuff we don't.
If I could ask everybody, if you're not going to be speaking, to mute your speaker because you get background noise. Brian,
The jump drives we have 16 gigs on them. So this has 32 gigs. I give you this one, and so that's
all right, we're getting somebody's background talking.
the terabyte.
You're gonna have to mute your speaker.
I had no idea.
I think so. Let me just check on Amazon.
Let me get his answer.
Brian, you there? Okay, where are you, Brian?
Looks like Brian's on mute also. Yeah.
All right, can you hear me now?
Oh, that's better. I'm gonna say.
Okay, I had the phone muted, but also my system was muting me. So, okay, well, thank you, Dale. I'm going to start with the staff of the State Soil and Water Conservation Committee. Is Victor DiGiacomo with us?
Yes, good morning. Victor Giacomo, Regional Field Staff for Western New York.
Thank you. PJ Emmerich.
Yes, good morning, everybody. PJ Emmerich, Region 2, AEA for Central New York and the Finger Lakes.
Thank you. Ryan Cunningham. Okay. Ron Bush. Okay. Brendan Jordan.
Hi, good morning. Brennan Jordan, CNMP Specialist, Conservation Committee.
Thank you. Greg Albrecht.
Good morning, everybody. Greg Albrecht, AIM-Based Program Coordinator and CNMP Specialist.
Thank you. Jennifer Clifford.
Good morning, Jennifer Clifford, CRF Program Manager.
Thank you. Scott Bickbaum. All right, thank you. I believe Scott has got a couple of conflicts with board meetings today. Ben Luskin.
Ben Luskin, Region 5 AEA and State Aid to Districts Program Manager.
Thank you. Bethany Bizdu.
Hi, I'm Bethany Bizdu. I'm a Program Manager with the State Committee.
Thank you. Jason Kokinos.
Hi, this is Jason Kokinos, Data Analyst with State Committee.
Okay. Tim is on vacation this week. Lauren Pazorski. Okay. Did I miss anybody from the State Committee staff? Okay, we're going to go to the advisory members of the State Committee now. Anybody on from CDEA?
Yep, this is Chaz. I'm here.
Thank you. DEC. Anyone on from DEC?
Yeah, I wasn't clear.
Yeah, this is actually Julie Berlinski. I just called in.
I thought that they would have
Thank you.
everything. So
right. Okay, who's on from Ag and Markets?
There was an area
Tim Sweeney here.
No tubes in it. Even if there were a few plants that didn't have
Thank you.
tube,
Still hearing a lot of discussion, a lot of chatter. If you're not discussing or talking at the State Committee meeting, please put your phone on mute. Okay, thank you. Department of State.
Yep.
Brian,
Stephanie is here from Department of State.
Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning.
Department of Health.
Yeah, Paul Kaczmarzyk's here.
Good morning, Paul.
Morgan's Isaac.
Good morning, Morgan. ESF, SUNY Environmental Science Forestry.
Good morning. This is Steve Shaw from SUNY ESF.
Good morning, Steve. Okay, who do we have from Cornell University?
Hey there, this is Brian.
Good morning, Brian.
Hi, everybody.
Good morning. This is Jennifer Whiteman.
Good morning, Jennifer.
Hi, Peter Woodbury here.
Good morning, Peter. Thank you for joining us. Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Beth Claypool.
Good morning, Beth. USDA NRCS. Okay, Blake told me he could not make it to the meeting today, but Paula Bagley might be joining us later. Okay, Dale, that concludes the roll call of staff and advisory members, and I just want to welcome all of our Conservation District partners today and all of our other guests on the line. And
Brian,
again, if you could just keep, oh, go ahead.
This guy Ryan, I'm NYACD.
Oh,
I had a
Scott,
problem logging
how
in.
are you?
Good.
Okay, well, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Brian. This is Paula Bagley. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine. Good morning,
Okay.
Paula. Thanks for joining.
You had responded when you talked, but apparently I can hear the audio through my phone, but I can't speak through there. So, great.
Okay, well, we can hear you now. Thank you very much. And again, welcome everybody. Please keep your phones on mute if you're not talking directly here in the meeting. And Dale, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. Move on to review and approve minutes. Do we have any additions or corrections from anyone? If not,
I'll move. This is Darren.
Second, this is Erica.
favor, aye.
Aye.
Minutes approved. Move on to correspondence, Brian.
Thank you, Dale. I don't actually have any official correspondence for the committee today, so I can go right into a budget report.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, again, for logging in today, and this is going to be a great meeting today. I'm just going to start off with a brief budget report. We have been working with our fiscal management division at the department over the last few weeks to develop our first list of claim for payments for the state fiscal year, which is essentially April through mid-June. The Division of Budget approves this list on a monthly basis. This is not new. This is how we've been operating now for many years. So we were able to receive approval from the Division of Budget to start processing claim for payments again, and also to start executing contracts. So this is really good news. It was good to see that they responded to our request. Again, with the Environmental Protection Fund, there are multiple agencies that administer programs. So the Division of Budget receives the same list of payments, same list of contracts from all of those various departments, and then does a split for each agency to be able to spend resources, spend funds on executed contracts and other projects. So we did receive an agency split so we could start paying down the claim for payments that we have collected since that April timeframe. It's not everything, it's not all that we need to cover all of our outstanding expenditures. But since we received the approval, we have been processing payments again. We're starting with the aim-based program payments, project closeouts, and other priorities, including farmland protection planning and implementation grants. We are confident that we'll get another appropriation for August that will start to cover other priorities such as Ag non-point source and CRF requests for advances. And, you know, since the EPF is being carefully managed, we'll be, asking through our regional field staff to conservation districts for updates on the status of projects related to these claims, so we can prioritize those that are tied to active construction and imminent completion. Good news is, yes, we're starting to process payments again, process contracts. That includes contracts through our base program, round 16, as well as round 25 contracts through Ag Non-Point Source. We are still waiting for the approval and authority to award projects through CRF round 5, but we're confident that we'll be able to do that at some point in the near future. I don't have any information as far as state fiscal year 2021 and the budget outlook for next year, but this is a good sign over the last few weeks that we've been able to work with fiscal management to process payments again and manage our expenditures and needs. Are there any questions?
I guess not, Brian.
Brian, this is Stephanie from Department of State. You said that you are able to execute contracts?
Yes.
From
Yes.
25. That's good.
Yeah, we made a special request to be able to do that so that we can finish up the execution of contracts for our current rounds. Many of those contracts were executed prior to us having to pause future contract activity, so we were able to wrap up those rounds. We haven't received approval to award new rounds of funding yet, but we're able to execute those contracts that were essentially paused over the last few weeks.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Anything else, Brian?
No, that should do it. That should do it for me. Thank you, Dale.
All right. Move on to Bethany and Jason, Ag Non-Point.
Okay, let me pull up our status report. Just 1 second. Okay, Jason, I think if you want to get things started by reviewing the dashboard that you put together.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with Ag Non-Point, and then when we are in the CRF section, I guess I'll swing back to the CRF one. But for an Ag Non-Point, to date, there have been 781 completed contracts totaling $122,673,111. This is an increase of 15 contracts from last month and $2,975,000. Currently, there are 162 active contracts totaling $55,105,000. This is a decrease of 15 contracts and a decrease in this column of $4,700,000. There are still 47 contracts totaling $16.3 million. There's no change in that. So that's it for the dashboard. Thank you.
So I'll just give a little update on those round 25 contracts. As Brian mentioned, we are finally getting approval to finish up executing or getting all the round 25s fully executed. So I would say by our next meeting, we should have all of those 47 contracts be moved over to that active contract column. We're nearly there now. There's only a few more that we're waiting for to be fully executed. Additionally, I just wanted to report out to the group that to date, so far this year, we've completed 27 contract closeouts. So we've been able to close on 27 of those. And so far this year, we've approved 7 amendments, all time extensions, and we will hopefully in a few minutes actually double that number with the number of time extensions that we have to talk to the committee about today. Are there any other questions on the dashboard? Hearing none, I guess I will pivot back to the amendments. Just bear with me again. Okay, so as I mentioned, we do have a number of time extension amendments to go over today, and all of the voting members should have received the full amendment packets. I believe on Friday I was able to email that out to everyone. So here we'll just review the summary of each request. The first time extension that we will need approval on is from Genesee County. It's for a round 23 project. They are looking to extend the contract for 1 year. And the district is requesting this extension because they are currently unable to proceed with the project due to the COVID-19 related financial uncertainties, particularly relating to the commodities market. The 12-month extension would allow the farm to reassess finances and gain certainty of future income. Right now, the project is currently in the design phase with the engineer finalizing data collection. Hopefully, the design will be finalized this fall with the procurement of the project to happen in the winter, which would allow construction to begin next year. This extension is supported by Victor DiGiacomo, Region 1 AEA, but referred to the state committee. Vic, if you have anything else to add regarding this contract, I also did see that Brad from Genesee County is on the line. If you have anything else you want to add as well, please feel free to do so.
From my vantage point, you summarized that quite well. I would defer to Brad if there's any more information that you'd like to provide, but I support the extension request.
Anyone, if nothing further, any questions or anything for anybody? From anybody? If not, motion to approve, please.
So moved. Second.
Second, okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Approved. Next one.
Next one is from Steuben County, also for a round 23 project. The district would like to request 1 year time extension. This would relieve some of the financial pressure that the farm is experiencing given the current dairy industry as well as COVID-19 situation. The landowner has been informed from potential contractors on the project solicitations that there will be a 4 to 6 month period before they can begin construction on the project, so which would put it in the fall time frame. Given that weather during the fall can be unpredictable, the extension would help give the farm sufficient time to complete their covered barnyard. The landowner has every intention to begin construction this year, however, may not be able to complete the project by the current deadline of December 2020. The extra year would give the landowner, the contractor, and the district ample time to implement the structure as planned with completion by the end of next year. This extension is supported by Victor DiGiacomo, Region 1 AEA, but referred to the state committee. Victor, do you have anything further to add on this one?
Nope, not really. Again, well summarized, and I will just point out again that the farm is extremely committed to completing the project, and I think we're going to see a lot of this over the next coming months related to financial issues and the uncertainty of the ag industry, and I support giving this farm an additional year to make those decisions.
Any other questions or comments, anyone? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
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 Okay, welcome on, Dave. All in
Okay.
favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Next one?
So we're shifting regions now, and these next few extension requests are coming to us from Region 2. The first one being from Cayuga County. They are looking to extend a Round 21 project. This would be a second time extension. The current end date of the contract is December 31st of this year, and they're looking to extend it to December 31st of 2021. So currently the grant is for the installation of 2 waste storage cover and flare systems. The farm has experienced several issues which has caused delays in the project. Those being financial hardships that were caused by a massive barn fire and prolonged low milk prices. The COVID-19 pandemic has also caused additional milk surplus and pricing issues, which has led to a delay in getting engineering completed. The farm has since completed engineering designs for the entire project, and they are currently installing required modifications to the existing manure handling system and storages in order to be able to accommodate the cover and flare. These modifications will be completed in the fall of this year. So far, the covers and flares have been designed and have been bid out, but the winning bidder is from out of state, and due to the COVID-19 travel restrictions, they're unable to start right at this time. The farm and the contractor are committed to completing the projects during the 2021 construction season. Additionally, the farm has elected to install synthetic liners in both of the storages, and the winning bidder of these projects will be detailed in the closeout report. The district is requesting the 12-month extension to accommodate 1 construction season to complete the project. This extension is supported by PJ Emmerich Region 2 AEA, but referred to the state committee. PJ, at this time, if you have anything additional you'd like to add, please do so. But we do also have Brian Hall from the Cayuga County Soil and Water Conservation District with us as well. If there are any questions, or Brian, if you want to add anything further to this, please go ahead.
This is Brian. So I tried to detail out as much as I could. There has been a lot of roadblocks with delays and the financial industry and all that, but I'm very confident we have made a lot of progress even through this time. So, construction is underway for the modifications to the project, and with these are not a real traditional BMP, so there was a lot of engineering and adjustments that need to be made, and timing is a real issue with being able to get the storage is empty at the right time and the contractor scheduled at the right time and heading late into the season. The actual winning bidder did elect to say that they would not do it because of the uncertainties until next spring. So if we can't do that, then we'll probably have to cancel the contract because it's just not possible to make all those moving parts work together. But if I'm confident we're going forward. Contracts are signed, approved by board and farm. So that's what we're hoping to do. And, the state grant, because they're adding in additional BMPs on their own, we will max out the state grant, and the landowner's percentage is going to far exceed what we originally put into the grant itself. So I hopefully we'll be able to move this forward. Thank you.
Ryan, any issues with a second time extension in 21?
No, Dale, I don't believe so. I mean, I think this is pretty well justified and documented as an extenuating circumstance.
And I'll just add to that as well. We have approved contracts We have approved second time extensions before with no issue. So.
Any other further questions or comments, anyone? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Next.
All right, the next one also comes to us from Cayuga County for a round 23 project. They're looking to actually extend the contract out 2 years. So they're requesting a 2-year extension. This grant is for the installation of a satellite waste storage on a CAFO dairy farm. The farm has experienced multiple delays over the last several years while trying to secure EQIP funding to support the project. Ultimately, they've decided not to apply for EQIP due to NRCS requiring many revisions to the current farm plan, as well as an in-depth investigation to the siting of the satellite location that was in conflict with some of the community impact policies. The farm has also experienced extreme questioning from local governments and communities. The farm has completed or had a completed design for the original location, but now has decided to relocate the satellite storage to a more rural location, which is closer to the main farm. And so the project needs to be resited and designed with the engineer. Additionally, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused low milk prices and difficulty in coordinating, the project to be able to move forward. So the farm is committed to completing the project in the next 2 construction seasons. This extension is supported by PJ Emmerich Region 2 AEA, but referred to the state committee. Again, PJ or Brian, if you want to add anything further for the committee on this specific extension, please feel free to do so at this time.
Okay, this is Brian. So this farm has been very proactive. We have been planning this over the last 2 years and trying to get it sited, and I think many of us have felt the issues with putting some satellite storages in become more controversial than the typical, installing at the main facility. That farm has gone, up to the state level with NRCS, and, we had ag and markets involved and site visits to try and discuss moving that forward. He's kind of since just said, okay, maybe there's a better use for this property, and, putting the manure storage in that area is not going to be worth the challenges that he's been facing. But he is still interested in having the storage capacity added and looking at siting it closer to the main facility at a different property, which was going to need more time to design and reset the system again. So I'll answer any other questions.
Any questions or comments, anyone? Motion to approve, please.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Approved. Next.
All right, the next one also comes to us from Cayuga County regarding a round 23 project. They are looking to extend this grant also an additional 2 years, and they want to extend it to December 31st of 2022. The grant, this particular grant is for the installation of 3 waste storage and transfer systems on 3 separate farms. One farm is under construction now and will be completed by the end of this year. The second farm has a completed design and that will be bid out this year, but it's unlikely to be installed this late in the season before the end of 2020. The third farm has had issues securing an engineer, but has a new engineer and has completed the survey and started the design of the project. All farms are CAFO-sized dairy farms, which have experienced delays in their projects due to prolonged low milk prices and now with the additional COVID-19 pandemic-related issues. Due to the pandemic, that has created additional delays in engineering and overall project coordination with all parties involved. So the remaining 2 farms are committed to completing the projects over the next 2 construction seasons ending in 2022. This extension is supported by PJ Emmerich, Region 2 AEA, but referred to the state committee. PJ, Brian, do you have anything additional to add to this one?
This is Brian. Thank you for the last 2, and maybe we'll go 3 for 3. So we have one completing here in the next week or so. The other one is designed, and we'll be putting that out to bid in the fall, as I said. We are experiencing some engineering bottlenecks. The 3rd farm has had to switch engineers, and so we're bringing somebody new into that. I'm trying to be proactive with asking for 2 years just because of the uncertainty of the way things are going, and we keep experiencing continued delays. So I'm trying to give us enough time to make sure that we can complete it all without having to come back to you again next year. I will say we will accept, a 1 year if that's what we can get, but I prefer to set it up for 2, and confident we would be able to complete it in that time frame.
Being proactive is far better. Any other questions or comments, anyone? Motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
And second? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Next.
All right, next one is from Ontario County Soil and Water for a Round 23 project. This contract currently ends on December 31st of 2020, and they're looking to extend it a year to December 31st of 2021. The district is requesting the additional time to complete the installation of a waste storage project. Financial considerations have delayed the start of the project, and now that NRCS funding has been obtained, the farm is planning on commencing construction late summer. An extension would ensure that all work on the completed or may be completed by the proposed end date of next year. PJ Emmerich, Region 2 AEA, supports this request but refers to the state committee. PJ, if you have anything further to add on this one, I also did see that Megan Webster from Ontario County Soil and Water is on the line as well.
Nothing further to add, Bethany. I think the description lays it out very well. And again, I would support the request, but of course refer to the state committee unless Megan has anything to offer.
No further information to author at this point.
Any questions or comments, anyone? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Next.
All right, next extension comes to us from Tioga County Soil and Water for a Round 23 project. The current end date is December 31st of 2020, and they are looking to extend the project 1 year to a new end date of December 31st, 2021. The district and the landowner are requesting a time extension for this project. All design work has been completed and quotes have been received, and construction will start in July. However, the construction has been delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. There are multiple practice components to install, and the district is concerned with the remaining construction window left for 2020. So they are requesting the no-cost time extension to provide one additional construction season to wrap up any remaining practice components that may not get put in this year. This extension is supported by PJ Emmerich, Region 2 AEA, and referred to the state committee. PJ, if you have anything further to add on this one, I believe I also saw Wendy Walsh from the Tioga County Soil and Water on the line as well if you'd like to add anything further.
I have nothing further to add, Bethany, other than that I would support the request and refer it to the state committee and defer to Wendy if she has any other information to offer.
I don't have any additional information unless there's questions.
Any comments or questions, anyone? If not, motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Approved. We move on?
Yes, one more to go. So the last one is from Tioga County Soil and Water. It's for a round 23 project. And the current contract end date is December 31st of 2020. And the district is looking to request a time extension on this project to December 31st of 2021. All design work for this contract has been completed. Quotes have been obtained, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there have been delays in obtaining those quotes. There are concerns with the delayed start to construction this year and with the multiple practice components that are needed to be implemented. The district is requesting a no-cost time extension that will provide one additional construction season in order to wrap up any remaining practice components that still need to be installed. This extension is supported by PJ Emmerich Region 2 AEA, referred to the state committee. If there are any further questions or anything you want to add, PJ or Wendy, please feel free to do so.
No, I would support that amendment request and just refer to the state committee and offer Wendy a chance to add any additional information if she has it.
Any comments or questions, anyone? Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Approved. I'm really appreciative of all the districts being proactive. Trying times. Hopefully, we'll be able to have a better year next year, but we'll have to wait and see. Okay, Bethany, what else you got to cover yet?
I just, real quick, round 26 update. I'll just mention that the round 26 proposals are currently being reviewed and scored by our review panel. And those scores are due back to me on August 7th. So hopefully after that, we'll be able to schedule a post-review meeting and have a ranked list ready for the state committee in September.
Great. Nothing else on that point source. We'll move on to CRF with Jason and Jennifer.
Okay. Let me, I'll get the dashboard back pulled up for you guys. Just 1 second. Can everybody see the dashboard?
Yep.
Yes, I can see the
I can see it.
Yep. Yep. All right, perfect. Okay, thank you. Is this, oh, hang on, I gotta get to the second slide. There we go.
Looks good. Okay, I'll start and then I can just pass it off to Jennifer. So in the CRF program to date, there have been 13 completed contracts totaling 1.3 million. That's an increase of 4 contracts from last month, or 214,000. There are 59 active contracts totaling 6.2 million. This is a decrease of 4 contracts totaling 288,000. There are still no pending contracts with $0. That's no change from last month. Since this report was written, we did get a cancellation from Tioga. Jennifer might cover that, but that was not submitted in time for me to update this dashboard. So we'll cover that next month along with the other updates. So that's it. And if anyone has questions on either of these dashboards, just let me know. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. So we did have a cancellation come in from a project. So that's 2 that we've had from the 4 rounds, which is pretty good. And no changes to round 5 as of yet, as Brian had mentioned earlier. But I do want to talk about the Hudson Valley Carbon Farming Project. We did have some movement on that recently. We were able to get the contract executed. That project the contract is being held by Dutchess and includes Sullivan, Columbia, Ulster, and Orange soil and water districts. So those 5 districts are working together to implement some soil health practices and practices that reduce greenhouse gases on farms in the Hudson Valley within their respective counties. As of right now, the contract was put on hold, but it's now been executed, so that's great. And all the farmers are lined up. The districts are working on landowner agreements, and some soil health testing will begin shortly. There wasn't too much of an impact on the pause that we had for that. There was only one landowner that we needed to really change out that just couldn't make the commitment anymore. But all others are going to proceed as planned, so that's great news. So it's going smoothly. And also part of that project is going to be some soil health outreach and education for the Hudson Valley region, and we'll start planning that soon. The other thing that is funded under the CRF line item is a Cornell soil health programming, and we've completed the year 3 on that, and year 4 is that contract is currently on hold until things get moving again. And 2 things that are of note under that is they're conducting a 2nd year of soil health specialist training with AFT. That was a very successful training they had, and this round there were 7 districts that applied for that. They're only accepting 20 participants, so that should be a really good programming. As well as there's a comparative analysis that they've been working on for cover crop funding programs that we're currently reviewing, and going to kind of couple those findings with a soil or a cover crop survey that Jason's working on to get a better picture of how to move our programs forward with efficiency and improve soil health adoption on farm. So that's an update on 2 of the programs under CRF. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
No questions, comments, anyone? Jennifer, Jason, anything else to add?
Dale, this is Brian Steinmiller. Oh, go ahead, Jennifer. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No problem. I was just going to say, don't really have anything to add. We'll just keep working on updating as far as movement for round 5.
Thank you. Brian, you're up next.
Yes. Well, before we move on to the next topic, I also just wanted to mention as well that the Climate Action Council has been meeting here during the pandemic via teleconference and video conference. They plan to meet again next week. This is the council that is made up of state agency commissioners as well as representatives from both houses of the legislature. And we are waiting for the convening of the individual work groups for which agriculture and forestry is combined into one work group that will be chaired by the Commissioner of Ag and Markets, Commissioner Ball, and we will have active participation on that work group. As that begins and we start to meet, we will certainly be bringing information and potentially recommendations to the committee for program development under that work group. that is all I have on the Climate Action Council. Dale. Oh, looks like Dale, you're muted.
I'm not learning it quick enough. All right, are you?
That's okay. We're gonna get it. Okay. We are running a little bit ahead of schedule, but I believe Peter Woodbury and Jennifer Whiteman are with us. So if we can go ahead and start the next portion of our agenda. Okay. Well, I want to thank Dr. Woodbury and Jennifer Whiteman for all the work that they've been doing with our State Soil and Water Committee and Agriculture and Markets over the years and helping us with program development. And I want to thank them today for graciously providing their time to present on recent work that they have done with us titled New York Agriculture and Climate Change, Key Opportunities for Mitigation, Resilience, and Adaptation. Just want to introduce both Jennifer and Dr. Woodbury as well. Jennifer Whiteman is a research specialist working on greenhouse gas mitigation strategies at Cornell University since 2002. Using systems thinking, she considers the emissions and mitigation potential in the life cycle of a product. She's passionate about transferring her empiric research to various groups, working with nonprofits like Central New York Resource Conservation and Development to assist farmers in thinking through early carbon credit trading mechanisms, attending Climate Alliance meetings in an effort to assist U.S. governors to meet the Paris Climate Accords, teaching undergraduates and graduate students about sustainable systems and biodesign at the New School in New York City, working with New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets on fact sheets, Tier 2 worksheets, and other mechanisms that address climate mitigation, economic vitality, and environmental well-being. Dr. Woodbury is a senior research associate in the section of soil and crop sciences at Cornell University. He designs ways to improve the sustainability of agricultural and forest ecosystems and to improve agricultural and environmental management and policy. He has decades of experience researching how air quality, water quality, and soil quality will be affected by climate change, and as well as how agriculture and forestry can become more resilient to climate change. He has researched how bioenergy, forest carbon sequestration, and agricultural practices can improve resiliency and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. For example, Dr. Woodbury recently worked with an international team to assess natural climate solutions, quantifying how 20 pathways of improved management of agricultural, forest, and wetlands can reduce greenhouse gas emissions to meet 37% of the Paris Agreement target by year 2030 globally and offset 21% of U.S. emissions. In addition to academic research, Dr. Woodbury provides tools, techniques, and expertise to federal and state governments on mitigation and adaptation opportunities in agriculture and forestry, and methods to account for these benefits. For example, he has contributed to national carbon accounting required under the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change. He also served on the U.S. EPA Science Advisory Board panel on biogenic carbon accounting to develop methods for accounting for CO2 emissions from biogenic sources. Again, I want to welcome Jennifer Whiteman, Dr. Peter Woodbury to the State Committee and thank them for their time. The presentation is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Can you see a picture of a farm on the screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, we see your entire PowerPoint program, though. You don't just see the slide presentation.
Okay.
Are you using two screens? There you go. That's it.
Okay, great.
Thank you. You got it.
Thanks for that feedback. That was very helpful. So, all right. Good morning, everyone. I'll be presenting today on work that Peter Woodbury and I did that was administered through the Department of Ag and Markets. And I just want to say how excited I am that we're at this moment where we're sharing our work with you, because I think there's a tremendous potential for synergy between these research projects, what we heard from your reporting this morning already and what you're already doing, and how this can help the state meet its goals. So just to give you an outline of the talk, I'll just briefly discuss carbon farming, what we evaluated, the importance of counting all 3 greenhouse gases, our smart decision matrix that we developed that helped us identify top 5 opportunities that New York State should head towards. Discussed quickly 2 ideas, permanence and verifiability of these mitigation opportunities, some things to work towards, next projects, and your questions. So this is the formal title, New York Agriculture and Climate for Mitigation, Resilience, and Adaptation. We call it the Carbon Farming Report, in part because it was in reference to the Carbon Farming Act, A3281, and it ran between 2018 and 2020. I just want to shout out to Brian, Greg, and Jennifer for being incredible collaborators on helping us develop this material. So I'm sure you all know New York State goals of a 40% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2030, an 85% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2050, and this applies to all sectors, including agriculture. But to get a sense of how much agriculture is actually contributing to our state total, from this New York State greenhouse gas inventory published in July 2019, it's referring to 2016 data, but the basic summary here is that agriculture contributes about 4% of our state emissions. So what is carbon farming? According to the Carbon Farming Act, it was defined as the implementation of land management strategy for the purposes of reducing greenhouse gases, sequestering or mitigating greenhouse gas emissions on the land, and used in support of farm operations and quantifying those greenhouse gas benefits. So what did we actually evaluate in this report? Well, we looked at the 3 different greenhouse gases together, and we looked at 5 general mitigation strategies. I'll talk about these quickly next. We then evaluated 13 different farm practices, and we quantified them, or we qualified their mitigation potential by other important things that are applicable in terms of thinking about whole system farm well-being. So the co-benefits that also happen as a result of this mitigation practice, the scale of the opportunity, like how big is it for New York State? Is it a tiny opportunity for New York State? How much did it cost to implement? Did it actually save farms money, or was it expensive and would need some kind of outside assistance? Is it realistic? Was it easy or hard to implement? Timeline, how long or how permanent was the mitigation potential? So to discuss the 3 greenhouse gases, we looked at carbon dioxide, of course, but methane, CH4, and nitrous oxide, N2O. And so I just want to point out here that carbon farming is something of a misnomer. Greenhouse gas mitigation on farms involves both nitrogen and carbon. So I just want to keep it in everybody's mind that we need nitrogen alongside both carbon dioxide and methane, which are carbon-based gases. So while most of the issue of climate change, around 80%, is from dioxide coming from the combustion of carbon stored in fossil fuels, methane and nitrous oxide are the gases that are very important to agriculture, in part because they are more potent greenhouse gases. And in order to account for these differences between greenhouse gases, scientists have created a unit called the carbon dioxide equivalent, or CO2e. These potencies are often evaluated with what's called the global warming potential, or GWP, and are used a 100-year timeline, right? Climate change is a 100-year or more than that year issue. And so people like to think about it in a 100-year timeline. And so you can see that methane is 25 times more potent of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, and nitrous oxide is about 300 times more potent. But I want to note that the CLCPA, the Leadership and Community Protection Act, which was signed in 2019, specifies to use a global warming potential on a 20-year timeline and from a different year from the IPCC. And that means methane is 84 times more potent of a greenhouse gas, and nitrous oxide is 260 times more potent of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And so what I'm trying to point out here is while most every other sector needs to think about carbon dioxide, agriculture really must think about methane and nitrous oxide because they are more potent greenhouse. And as a result of their potency, methane and nitrous oxide account for 75% of agricultural greenhouse gases. So again, I just want to we need to think about all three gases at the same time when we're thinking of net mitigation on farm. So what are 5 broad categories to mitigate greenhouse gases? I'm sure you guys know about a lot of this already because you're implementing some of these projects. But we can sequester carbon in trees, soil, and long-lived wood products. We can destroy methane like you have in carbon flare projects. We can increase the efficiency. We can increase energy efficiency use on farm, milk production efficiency, crop production efficiency, nitrogen use efficiency. Each one of these efficiencies reduces inputs and reduces corresponding greenhouse gases per unit product made. We can displace fuels by producing renewable energy, or we can conserve natural resource or leave forests as forests in order to keep the carbon sequestered there. So the goal of this project was to determine effective practices for agriculture to mitigate greenhouse gases. And the practices we focused on by farm area. On dairy farms, you can look at feed management, how you can improve the milk production efficiency to reduce methane and nitrous oxide. Manure storage, how can you address stored to address methane and nitrous oxide? Crops, you can manage your nitrogen and soil carbon for mitigation purposes. Woodlands, you can improve how well your forest is growing and therefore increase your carbon that is sequestered there. Or you could think about sort of double cropping through agroforestry with things like alley cropping or silvopasture. One really great big practice that we'll talk a lot about is about how to use our idle lands. And now we can afforest them, which is to say we plant trees, previously unforested land in recent years. We can put solar and wind energy products on that idle land, or we can grow biomass for feed or fuel or other activities. And again, we can conserve by reducing energy or resource use and conserving our land. So in order to think through these different mitigation practices, we came up with something we called the SMART matrix, and it allows us to evaluate multiple criteria. And so you can see the SMART, these are co-benefits. M is a evaluation of the measurability or the quantity at the New York State level. The cost to achieve the implementation. R refers to how realistic is it to implement. Do we have technologies, for example? Are stakeholders to consider? And T refers to the time frame of implementation. Now, if I were to give you the shorthand on reading our for you to pages 16 to 29, where we lay out each of the 13 practices using the SMART matrix. So you can go to your practice and you can see how we considered each of these attributes when evaluating a practice. So when we talked about services, we mean co-benefits or ecosystem services by implementing a given. So that could be, in addition to greenhouse gas mitigation, perhaps it contributes to soil health, community relations, adaptation to climate change, increases profitability of the farm, improves air and water quality, increases biodiversity, or either is a production of new energy, reduction of existing energy needs. M was measurable. That means that this was an estimate, a preliminary estimate of statewide greenhouse gas mitigation potential. To see the scale of the opportunity at the state level in order to think about state level policy. And we qualify this to the degree by which an activity is verifiable. You might be able to, but it might be difficult to verify it a year from now or 10 years from now. And so measurable was by the degree it was verifiable. Achievable. Achievable was an attempt at an approximate cost estimate for implementing a project. We kept it in the range of $0 to $100 per megagram CO2e or metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalents. And what is important to note is that this range of $0 to $100 was a cost for implementation on a farm only. It doesn't include the cost to educate, measure, verify, or account for these mitigation values on formal registries. Realistic refers to the amount of engagement required, such as how many acres are applicable, how many acres across the state are applicable, how many stakeholders need to be engaged, are there technical equipment. In other words, realistic refers to can now, or do we need more research, education, or technology to support? And finally, T refers to which can refer to the lifespan of the infrastructure to implement, the time limits of the mitigation strategy, and the short and long-term effectiveness. Directly, this letter T in time frame refers to the idea of permanence. When you mitigate the emission today, is that a permanent mitigation, or is it possible that that mitigation can be reversed? So these are the 13 practices we've. You'll see that there's a broad variety of them. I'm going to focus in on 5 of them, but again, refer to pages 16 to 29 if you want to look into any of these other areas. Our top 5, based on our SMART criteria, were manure cover and flare, nitrogen use efficiency, feed efficiency, improved management of woodlands, and planting trees on idle lands. So our top 5 mitigation practices, they were either a cost savings to a farm, $50 per metric ton of CO2 equivalents mitigated. They represent real mitigation and permanent mitigation. Most can be directly verified, and they have a suite of co-benefits, while many increase production and efficiency of New York State agriculture. So I'm going to go through the top 5 quickly. The first, manure cover and flare, which obviously you all know about, provides a very large mitigation opportunity for New York State, roughly 1.3 million metric tons of CO2 equivalents per year. It's a low cost per metric ton and a small group of stakeholders. This 1.3 million to roughly 500 large farms in the state. And it has benefits. It has community relations in that it reduces odor or neighbors. It prevents rainwater from being added to the manure storage, which then reduces rainwater hauling costs. Extreme weather events, it prevents with the cover, it prevents SPDES over if storage becomes over capacity. Plus, there's existing programming, and many farms have already implemented it, so there's an opportunity for farmer sharing of considerations. Some barriers. As you will know, there's an upfront cost to the barrier. So despite it being inexpensive on a state level for mitigation, it can a large cost for a farmer. It may require an engineering to retrofit. And as we heard this morning, pricing and farmability to participate in cost share is a barrier. And there's continued need for technical assistance. One strong recommendation: any new manure storage that is designed be designed to easily accept a cover and flare system subsequently, if not at the time of the manures. Feed efficiency, the opportunities and barriers here. We estimate that approximately 0.7 million metric of CO2 equivalents could be mitigated every year. And this would be at a cost saving for a farm. It applies to all livestock, but in particular, we focus on ruminants because they're big methane producers. Many farms are already doing it, so there's a ton of opportunity for farmer to farmer exchange. Some barriers: there are upfront costs to the farmer, technical assistance, feed management planning and implementation, improved diet, feed and forage management, and then continued, implement, but then also sustaining that implementation. So again, this is only as effective as the annual implementation of the farm participation.
Jenny, this is Brian Steinmuller. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Please.
The last two opportunities we're dealing with methane, were those metric ton reduction estimates based on the 20-year or the 100-year global warming potential for methane?
Okay, they were 100-year, and so they're going to be much more cost beneficial on the 20-year. We have not updated the new numbers. Does everybody understand?
Right, and I point that out because I'm sorry. I point that out because the Climate Act requires us to look at methane on a 20-year global warming potential. So I just wanted to clarify that point for everybody. Thank you.
All right, everybody. We use these numbers on the right, 125 and 298, and in our future we will be using these numbers on the left. And so you can see that the multiplier for methane is going to be roughly 3 times. 2 to 3 times more than what is currently, or 3 times more. And then nitrous oxide is roughly the same.
Thank you, Jenny, for clarifying that.
Okay. Nitrogen use efficiency. While this opportunity is only roughly 2.2 million metric tons of CO2 per year, this is a cost savings or low cost per metric ton of CO2, and it feeds right into existing 4R guidelines of right source, right time, right place, and right rate. Applies to all farms that are using nitrogen. Many farms are doing it, so there's farmer to farmer communication, and then there are these great co-benefits of improved water quality and reduced upstream production emissions, because producing synthetic is an energy intensive process. Some barriers are that we need to shift away from this idea of insurance and applying extra N. And then there's an upfront cost to the farmer for soil testing. And also more costly is the idea of considering precision nutrient management. These require technical assistance, they require implementation, and then they require sustaining that implementation. Woodland management. So 20% of ag land is considered wooded, and that's roughly 1.4 million acres. And since farmers are great land managers and improved forest management leads to long-term profits, this provides a great opportunity for farmers to help mitigate climate change on their property. Plus, many forest owners are doing it, so there's the ability to share knowledge between groups, and there are incredible co-benefits of diversifying the farm income, improving diversity and habitat for other species, and improving water and air quality. One of the biggest barriers for this is that When a farm has a financial pinch, often the forest harvest is to address that economic strife. It can, and it also requires costs. So you need a forest management plan, and then you have to pay to implement periodic maintenance in order to keep the forest growing at its optimal growth. Additionally, one of the things we'd like to point out here is that there's a cultural separation between foresters, and we think that that really needs to change in terms of mitigation. And we need to advance the sharing across land uses. And this would also apply for solar, all kinds of things, but we need to start working across land uses, and requires technical assistance, but there is certainly a lot of knowledge in this state for managing forests well. Now, this last is the biggest opportunity, and there are lots of unknowns for this one. And so while I enthusiastically support this opportunity, I want to throw caution because it will take some work and some commitment. So New York State has roughly 1.7 million acres of idle or underutilized land. And one opportunity among many is to plant trees on these acres. And if we planted trees on these acres, we estimate 4.9 million metric tons of CO2 per year. What's so great about this opportunity is it increases the profitability of this land area for rural economic development, and it also builds lived wood products. Remember, trees sequester carbon, but then if you harvest high quality timber, you then sequester that carbon for another 100 years in furniture or in building materials. And so it's a really great way of pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and keeping it bound up in profitable products. Or we could do different things with these 1.7 million acres. Put on solar panels and wind turbines. We could grow perennial grasses or short rotation willow for bioenergy. We could increase our beef grazing, or we could grow some new product or do something else with this land. But the point is, we have 1.7 acres that was formerly agriculture, and there's lots we could do with it. Some barriers for growing trees is that we have a huge deer population which happen to browse on our favorite species of trees. Various pests and invasive shrubs prevent the implementation of new forest systems that we prefer. Another huge barrier is that there's diverse ownership in New York State of these million acres, and they all have different interests and goals of what to do with them. They're parcel, and they're of varying soil quality and slope. There are upfront costs to activate this land use change and technical assistance. And so while this is our biggest opportunity with the possibilities, there are lots of unknowns in this opportunity. So to just compare some of our 5-star practices versus our practice, I'm going to show a sort of an abridged version of the SMART table. So on the left-hand most column, you see manure cover and flare versus biochar. Biochar is carbonized wood that breaks down and can last 100 years in soil. So as you can see in the system benefits, manure covers and flares, as I discussed earlier, improves water quality by resiliency to extreme weather, reduced hauling of rainwater costs, and decreased odors for neighbor relations. Biochar also gets a star for improving water quality and soil health. In terms of mitigation that is measurable, manure cover is large, and it's easily verifiable with a meter and a flare that has a temperature sensor on it. Biochar has the large, but there are other things to consider. And while the manure cover and flare cost less than $10 per metric ton of CO2 equivalents, biochar is to be determined. And while covers and flares are here, and we only need to engage large farms in order to reach this 1.3 million metric tons per year. The technology is available, farmers are doing it, it is realistic. So while it might be real mitigation to use biochar, we need much more research. Also, the time frame of mitigation. Methane destruction is permanent, so it is a long-term mitigation of current emissions, whereas biochar has potential, but we need to look at the full life cycle to make sure that the net greenhouse gas emissions are achieved. So I just want to illustrate how we began to compare all of those opportunities. And again, page 16 to 29 of our 65-page paper. To summarize, these top 5 relative to our emissions are estimated emissions for New York State. On the left-hand side, you'll see our preliminary estimates of what agriculture is in New York State. Enteric is 3.7, 3.7 million metric tons of CO2 equivalents per year. Manure management, 2.2, and nitrogen emissions is 2.2, and other emissions, which I haven't illustrated here, are 1.8 for a total of 9.9 million metric tons. If you combine 4 of the projects that I just described, we are addressing about 7.1 million metric tons of CO2 equivalents. Again, I just want to qualify, this requires that all idle land is forested. This number will change if we choose different practices to apply to this land. What does that mean? 7.1 out of 9.9, roughly 70% of agricultural emissions can be mitigated from these 4 or 5 practices. And to go back to New York State goal, % reduction in GHG by 2030, we've got it for an 85% reduction in GHG by 2050. I think our meet these goals, and I think that's very exciting news. So a few notes on accounting. So this is sort of playful thinking here in order to discuss a few issues that are involved. And this is about the boundaries of accounting for greenhouse gases. So imagine you have an upstream synthetic nitrogen manufacturer that sequesters carbon in the actual fertilizer and makes it in Nebraska. And they sell it to a farm in New York, applies that nitrogen fertilizer to the field, thus releasing that same carbon. Should the manufacturer get a credit for sequestering carbon in Nebraska, and the farmer in New York be penalized for the emission on his field or her field? This gets to the idea of permit. Imagine that the Nebraska manufacturer sequesters the carbon in the fertilizer in January, and the New York farmer applies it in May, releasing that same carbon. Should there be any credit or any penalty? We're just trying to use this as an example for why we need to think about permanence. Agriculture is a breathing system that must move carbon around. And in my perspective, the synthetic manufacturer should get a credit for sequestering that carbon that is released in May. And we should think about that in a lot of cases. If my mom sequesters carbon in a tomato that she serves, does she get a credit for sequestering carbon in the tomato, and I get docked or have a penalty for metabolizing that tomato? So we have to think about surface cycling of carbon that is natural versus true mitigation of carbon sequestration. Viability through the eyes of measurability. So a farmer measures that he or she has sequestered carbon in the field. This is a strategy. But that same farmer can't measure the nitrous oxide emissions from the field. That is an emission. Since nitrous oxide is roughly 300 times more potent than CO2, how to evaluate the net mitigation? The two key attributes that I hope you take away from this talk and from the paper that we hope that New York State aspires for its mitigation strategies are permanent and verifiable. Since climate change is a long project, it requires a long-term mitigation. So advocates for projects that result in real and permanent mitigation. The more permanent a mitigation strategy is, the more meaningful it is to mitigate the issue at hand. And generally that means it's more verifiable. When thinking verifiability, all three greenhouse gases need to be accounted in order to assess the net mitigation from a practice. Verifiable, easily verifiable projects are more, well, a more easily or metered, monitored, or measured project is more easily verifiable. And we also have to think about whether something is sure to be permanent. If something is more permanent, it is easier to verify than something that's reversible. But the key is that the more difficult it is to verify, the more costly it is to include that practice in our state accounting. We use the social cost to be less than $100 per ton of CO2 equivalent. And the social cost of carbon is a measure in dollars of the long-term a ton of carbon dioxide emission. So it's a comprehensive estimate of climate change damages and includes changes in net agricultural productivity, human health, property damages from increased flood risks, and changes in energy system costs such as reduced costs for heating and increased costs for air conditioning. So this is anticipating what generations or future decades will pay per ton of carbon dioxide equivalents emitted. Now, this number is contested and different numbers. I just wanted to point out that we set this as our up for this analysis, and that also there's an upcoming DEC webinar on the New York. New York is going to come up with its own version of the valuation of carbon this Friday. So I just wanted to point that out. So we chose $100 per metric ton of CO2 equivalents. Is this too high or too low? I want to qualify that our estimated cost was only for implementing the farm. There are extreme things that need to happen. There needs to be education costs to create new education materials, new research and distribution of them. There are costs for implementing policies like yours. Then there are costs for measuring the evidence of the mitigation, ensuring the purpose, and the associated reporting. And then there's the cost of hiring a third-party verifier and the cost of the registries that account for all the activities. So again, I just want to reiterate that the costs we presented were for implementing a practice on farm as opposed to surrounding and supporting topics. So we have to think about the value. Do we count the co-benefits on site that are associated with these greenhouse gas emissions? If it's easy to quantify, that reduces costs, but we have to look at the total cost to implement, and we also have to look at society's capacity. So it's a complicated mashup. And we have to ask ourselves, is everything a win-win? No, but choices. And we hope that we have provided some good choices here. What do we pay for? Do we pay only for the GHG, the greenhouse mitigation, the greenhouse gas emission benefit, or greenhouse gas mitigation benefit, or other things like clean water and healthy soils? Or do greenhouse gas caps and use the markets to accommodate for the increased costs? So there are financial ways to mitigate farm GHG, market-driven, voluntary actions like doing double cropping because it increases products and sales, or public and financial support such as federal, state, and local governments providing expertise, grants, tax incentives, and/or peer support systems, or something more like compliance-driven, like the Cap and Trade program of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, where the electric sector is regulated, and in that regulation, they pay for reforestation offset projects to mitigate carbon. Some existing programs in New York State, excuse me, you all know very well. Your CRF, cover and flare soils and water quality projects. There's the DEC tree tributaries projects. There's the soil and water conservation in Cornell districts and the Cornell Cooperative Extension outreach programs. There's the Ag and Markets Tier 2 worksheets. There's the New York State Environmental Protection Fund, Open Space Program, conservation easements, and potentially regional green offsets. Though I still don't think one has occurred yet in New York State. So farming since 2015 has had 4 rounds. This is from your very own Jennifer Clifford. 8 million for projects on 121 farms, and has mitigated 15,500 metric of CO2 equivalents per year. I did not do a calculation of a percentage of the total that we need to mitigate. It is modest. But what is so exciting about the climate resilient farming programming that you all have set up is that we have the basic infrastructure in place, and it gives us an opportunity to scale up. Moving forward, some considerations. Please remember, we need to evaluate all 3 greenhouse gases together before we give an assessment on the net mitigation. We need to prioritize permanent and verifiable in order to know that we're making the progress that we want to make to help future farms be able to respond to an ever increasing change in climate. Consider the co-benefits and other state objectives. Sometimes a water quality is the primary objective, and greenhouse gas mitigation can be a co-benefit. Other times, greenhouse gas mitigation can be the primary benefit, but we should acknowledge when it helps things like water quality. And then compare alternatives for current agricultural land. There are many uses such as bioenergy, solar, wind, afforestation, and increased agricultural production. Some recommendations. We could, and I would love to help this happen, integrate greenhouse gases into current soil and water initiatives, such as revising the Ag BMP systems catalog so that it includes greenhouse gases. I just think this is a slam dunk. In farm planning. If 20% of farmland is wooded, this is just such a great way to increase farm profitability and forest health and carbon sequestration. Prioritize permanent greenhouse gas mitigation activities. Growing food is predicated on the turnover of nitrogen, and we need to continue that turnover of carbon and nitrogen in order to grow our great products. But in terms of mitigation, we should prioritize mitigation projects that are permanent activities so that we can address climate change. Celebrate and share current farm mitigation activities so that farms can learn from other farms and make the next generation of good decisions. Advocate for the expansion of the climate resilient farming programming and others, and continue the are doing, or you all are doing already. One quick note, in April, we began a 3-year project with DEC to create a New York State agricultural greenhouse gas inventory, mitigation potential, and 3 future scenarios. We will get back to you. We have lots of work to do. I just want to say thank you for participating today, and also thank you to the New York Department of Agriculture for working with us and funding this project, and for their previous support. Also, the Department of Environmental Conservation for their current work, New York State Energy Research and Development for some previous work. These are our contacts, and you can find these and a lot of other materials on our blog. And then are the key references. The first is the paper we presented today, and the second is a paper that informs this paper, and it was done for NYSERDA, and it's the more quantitative version of this project.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was a great presentation, covered so much ground, and thank you also, Dr. Woodbury, for all of your contributions to this project as well. I will, as Jennifer Whiteman said, that we can take questions now. I know that there was a few comments in the chat box about access to this presentation and to the report itself. Thank you for including those references in the presentation. This will also be appended to our state committee minutes with a link to the actual report and also a link to this recording, so folks can listen to it again or share it with their district boards or anyone else who is interested. So again, thank you.
This is Dale.
Question?
Really, you're going to need, I think, working with DEC, because a major contribution would be the reforestation of idle lands. We need a reforestation program, something that's way beyond anything that exists today, if we are going to stand any chance at all of accomplishing even close to that goal. And it would vary throughout the state on it due to the topography. What we have today, it's not going to forest all that land.
Yes, it is a very challenging objective, but we also can do other things with that land too. I think the big take home that is that we've got 1.7 million acres of idle land to be activating in the state, and I think in terms of our economic development, our land management strategies, I think this provides sort of a great opportunity. And whether or not it goes to forest or solar is a whole other issue. Peter might want to speak a little bit about the impact of the solar goals for the state, which is considering sometimes prime agricultural land. And if we could move those solar projects to these idle lands, that would be a great use of those idle lands. There's just a lot of opportunity to both mitigate and also vitalize communities where those lands are not participating. But you bring up a point that we need to come up with some kind of a reforestation policy, and I'm sure Peter and I would be more than happy to talk more about that. Peter, do you want?
Quick question. This is Erica. And then just to follow up, did you look at solar as well? I know you had the number with the 4.9 that would made up the 7.7 if all is forested, but did you kind of look at what other uses?
No, and that's a very important thing to do, and we understand that. And but this is afforestation is an incredibly solid way of activating these lands for a significant reduction in greenhouse gases. But we have not side-by-side comparison between bioenergy, grazing, solar, wind, and afforestation. That is.
Hi, this is Peter. I will chime in on a couple of these topics briefly. What I heard with Dale's question is that this idea of afforestation would require a really, I would characterize it as extremely ambitious and extremely large and complicated endeavor to make any large fraction of that happen. This is not going to happen on its own. So I think it's an example of an opportunity that has this very large technical potential, which is important. If we're serious about mitigating climate change, we need to look at things that have a large potential. But in this case, it would really be a huge new effort. It would require research as well as all kinds of activation, motivation. It would be a huge effort. And there are technical issues that have to be solved as well to make it happen. The reason it's on the table again is it has a large potential. A lot of carbon is stored in trees. And again, we think that there are multiple benefits to regrowing native forest species, not only economic benefits, but other benefits as well. As Jenny pointed out very clearly, this is a big land use question. So we have to think about what else, all of the other opportunities she mentioned and more for using this land. And I would echo that if there are ways for the state to encourage solar development on lower quality farmland, on this idle land in particular, that would be great. I think the business as usual approach on that will be to put smaller and also industrial scale solar installations close to the transmission lines and close to roads. And that's going to be in the big valleys. And a lot of that is going to be valuable prime farmland and other highly valuable farmland.
Town of Ogden here is putting in a large solar system, or it's in the town, to be only on marginal land. It's very high quality soils in the farms in those areas, a lot of special farms. And they're clearing marginal land and putting on a very large installation, where the town of Rush near us is doing 3,000 acres on prime land. So it's really town to town, and we need a way to incentivize the solar to be put on the more marginal, not the prime land. Questions, anyone? Comments, please. This is a great presentation.
Brian, this is Kelly Emmerich from Monroe County. I just had a thought on how it seems like this is a perfect opportunity to talk about the Environmental Bond Act that's being proposed. And if you had any idea, if you've been involved, if your department's been involved with any conversations on how that money will be distributed. Is the department looking at getting a chunk of those funds? Because one of the program areas is climate change mitigation, and this seems to go very much hand in hand with what's been presented here to put BMPs on farmland. I didn't know if you had any further information on that Bond Act, or if you've been involved in any of those discussions.
Thank you, Kelly. Actually, I was going to reserve a brief on that for other reports at the end of the meeting, but this is a good time to bring it up briefly. Yes, we have been in discussions all along from the very beginning of the concepts rolled out for the Restore Mother Nature Bond Act, including back in January, February, where there was an effort to host roundtable discussions with local stakeholders. Of course, that was sidelined by COVID-19, but at this point in time, we are engaging in discussions with the various agencies that would be tasked in administering and implementing the Restore Mother Nature Bond Act funds to develop a roadmap, if you will, as to how it may be administered and implemented. Of course, this is a measure that has to go to the voters at the general election in November. So, we are preparing as if it would be passed, and we would have access to those funds to amplify our existing programs. You do point out, and it's correct, that there are a number of categories, not the least of which climate change mitigation, that includes our work on farms for methane management and other greenhouse gases, but also community resilience, flood risk reduction, green infrastructure, other practices, whether it's applied on farms or in communities, that will help us meet these goals. So yes, those discussions are occurring.
Thank you. So, so you're thinking that because the money is going to be through Department of Environmental Conservation, that your department will have some of those funds to distribute down to districts, you're thinking?
Well, it's included in the capital projects budget that was released back in April. But a number of agencies who administer programs through the EPF, for example, including Department of State, Parks and Recreation, DEC, of course, Ag and Markets, have been involved in discussions as to how we're all going to have a piece to implement.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Jenny, you had mentioned, I believe it was on slide 48, but talked about this need throughout the presentation and throughout our work on this research project about the need to evaluate all greenhouse gases together. But you also mentioned that a farmer may have an ability to measure, let's say, carbon content in soils, but not easily measure the nitrous oxide emissions. Do either of you have any idea of how we might be able to, in a cost-effective way, gather that information so that we can consider nitrous oxide with carbon emissions and sequestration related to field-based practices?
Okay.
Are there tools available that we could use, models and that sort of thing?
Jenny, shall I make a start on that one?
Let me just set you up, Peter, which is the scale of the opportunities we have to think of, and just think about the scale of the opportunities. So just remember that nitrogen is almost 300 times more potent. So I'm going to shove it over to Peter, but right there you've got a situation. But Peter's really good at this. So.
Okay, so I think the question I heard is maybe we can do a better job of measuring carbon, but we don't want to leave out nitrous oxide just because it's hard to measure. And I would just sort of step back and say yes to all of the above. So Jenny's point that we want to include all the greenhouse gases, even if there are uncertainties, in some cases we can manage those uncertainties. A challenge with soil carbon is it's not only hard to measure. I mean, it can be done at the research scale very well, but it's extremely expensive to measure it adequately, measure the change in soil carbon on a farm over a 5-year period. It's more of a research effort than something that can be done at a reasonable cost in the context of verifying climate change mitigation. Even if you can do that measurement effectively, and there are lots of tricks and tools to attempt to bring those costs down, it's not permanent. So you measure it today, and then the next day somebody can come in and change their tillage practice and lose a lot of the carbon that was really there. So there's a permanence issue that's very challenging for soil carbon. You're right that nitrous oxide is really hard to measure. And again, it's a research effort as opposed to something that can be done in a cost-effective way, such as can be done by measuring the flaring of methane from a storage unit. However, with nitrous oxide, and we've published on this, including a new publication for corn, we can make estimates that if you can reduce the nitrogen fertilizer application rate and maintain your yield, we can make a reasonable estimate of the reduction in nitrous oxide emission that you'll get for that reduction in nitrogen fertilizer use. So it's very hard to measure, but we can make a reasonable estimate of it. And also it's a permanent reduction. So when you avoid that emission, you've avoided it permanently. So it doesn't have the permanence challenge that we have with soil carbon. I could probably talk for an hour, but I'm going to stop right there and happy to take any, follow-up.
Oh, thank you. No, I just was also, asking about what available models or what available tools are there for us to help bring all of these greenhouse gas emissions together when we're looking at reductions. We use the Comet Planner, for example, in districts that have the capacity to use Comet Farm and other tools that can help look at greenhouse gas reduction while we're also counting other environmental benefits. So, I think ongoing work with your team and with DEC's Office of Climate Change and other partners will be how we better quantify and measure our emission reductions. How do we better count them today, and then how we apply practices and what that does to actually reduce the emissions. So, if measurement is a real challenge in some areas, what other tools are available to us? So I appreciate that response very much. Thank you.
Sure, and I'm happy to provide some references. We've published some on kind of the use of different kinds of models for this policy verification. So no easy answers, but yes, there are models available. Yes, they can be used. And there's a range from fairly simple statistical models to more complex ones, such as the Comet tools have a complex model underlying them.
Thank you again. Are there any other questions or comments, Peter and Jenny? From anybody participating on the phone?
Hey, Brian. This is Brian Rahm from Cornell. Thanks, Jenny and Peter. That was great. I guess I don't know. I'm out of this game. I've been out of this game for a little while, but in a previous life, I did greenhouse gas measurements at wastewater treatment facilities, including nitrous oxide. And I agree with everything Peter and Jenny said about it. It's difficult. You can do research scale work. One thing as a follow-up to some of that work, one thing that I found really useful to me, and I think you're doing it now, but one thing that was useful was trying to put these recommendations in front of practitioners, engineers, farmers, doing focus groups, because you guys obviously put a lot of work into your metrics. It had to do with like ease, and verifiable, whether things were verifiable. I'm just wondering if there's a way to continue to put this work in front of farmers and land managers to continue to get their feedback on how you guys have set up the metrics, and whether or not whether or not something emerges in terms of those 13 practices you looked at, and you guys sort of starred 5, and just to kind of get some I don't know, some truth checking to that. That's the wrong word, but getting buy-in from people who are going to actually do this. So, if that's something that the Soil and Water Commission can help put together, that sort of dialogue. Not sure if that makes sense.
I think from my viewpoint that you have to, in a briefer way, get the information out to farmers so that they can understand the importance of what is going to have to be done by 2050, so that they can understand changes that they'll have to be looking at. If we got to reduce this much greenhouse gas in the multiple forms, the cover and flares are pretty simple to do, and the knowledge about them outside of the cost. All the rest is going to take some more research to convince the farmers at the level to do and what to do, and the landowners if it's reforestation. I think farmers and the landowners need to know the importance of it, and we need a way to get that out to them that we don't now have.
That is a good point, Dale. And Brian, thank you also for raising it. So this is a good step here. As Jenny talked about earlier in the presentation, we have done work together before that provides tools for our AEM planning framework, provides new ways to look at our existing cost share programs, provides information to our conservation districts, farm planners, extension agents on these important issues, that all can be used to help get the word out that is very well detailed in this report. And also, as I mentioned, as a part of the CRF program update, and I'm sure we'll hear more, and I will bring more to the committee as it continues, but that is the work of the Climate Action Council and the associated subcommittees and working groups that are going to be tasked with developing programs, with opening up opportunities to meet those ambitious greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. So that will also be a really critical piece to getting the information out to the policymakers, to the program developers, and most importantly, to those that are implementing these practices on land, and as a part of the goals and solutions. So certainly more to come on that.
This is Jennifer Clifford. I'll just add that I think it's almost a trickle down in that you're really getting this information out to your technical experts at the district and your technical service providers, and then having that coupled with an easy to work with program that can help fund and encourage a lot of these projects or practices that we want to see. And that kind of coupled together makes the perfect kind of storm for the farmer to be able to know from the district or the planner, whoever they're working with on the ground, that how to do things, how to implement, how to go after them, and then having the ability to go after it financially or with the technical support needed. I think that's kind of how you really get this information out to the farmer. I don't think it's necessary to I think there's like a trickle down that kind of happens with it.
Thank you, Jennifer. Really good point. Any other questions, comments?
Brian,
Yes.
can you hear me? It's Jan Blair from Westchester County.
Yes, thank you for joining us, Jan.
Hi there. Listen, I had a couple of things of ways to get the word out to farmers. We have, the Watershed Ag Council, and we also have the Ag and Farmland Protection Board in Westchester, and we have the New York State Association of Counties that has an agricultural standing committee, and we have a meeting coming up fairly shortly. I sit on their council. And so there are opportunities, at least in our area, to get the word out. But the New York State Association of Counties might be another good contact.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
I had an opportunity to present to the Association of Counties with Commissioner Ball back in the wintertime on AEM and Ag Non-Point Source, climate resilient farming, and certainly I welcome an opportunity to do the same with, an ability to present on some of this research that will inform our programs moving forward. Is a really good point. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's great because there is a meeting coming up, so I can certainly mention it and maybe possibly have it at the next meeting, have a presentation by you.
Thank you. You do have my email address. Certainly send me that information.
Sure. Okay,
Really
I'll do that. I'll forward it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this is Jenny speaking. I just want to actually think of your favorite best practice and scroll between 16 and 29 and actually see how we laid it out. Like, we don't all have to look at all of them. This paper created attempts to both reach technicians and policymakers. And so the best way to navigate it is through the table of contents. There's all different sort of components to, but for your group in particular, I do think just sort of seeing the complexities of overview and separating out, is this a good greenhouse gas emission strategy? Like, can we fund it and then account for it at the state level? Versus, is this a really great farm resiliency project that we should probably fund? Maybe not for greenhouse gas mitigation, but for farm viability and well-being and vitality. So like, so that there isn't so much sort of, does it do everything or one thing? Kind of taking what I feel like your group has done consistently, which is a kind of cohesive view of what we want from the state. Just understanding that the state goals are fierce, and we try to distinguish between projects that were permanent and verifiable in order to address the state goals, as compared to projects that might be less permanent and less verifiable, but are really great projects for farm well-being. And so it's not like a win-lose or a lose-win or a win-win or a lose-lose. It's just sort of about being honest about the accounting and the two objectives of farm well-being and the objective of greenhouse gas mitigation. And we focused on identifying, the most permanent objectives in order to meet this issue, which is going to future farmers' ability to farm, which is a time scale, but it doesn't mean that it's better or worse. Limited funds, we were trying to promote a direction towards something that could account at the state level.
Hi, Peter. Sorry, go ahead, Jenny. Yeah, thanks for all those thoughts, Jenny. And I just want to open as well that, we consider this to be a work in progress. We would very much welcome questions, suggestions, whether it's tough questions or suggestions about any of these practices, or why didn't you include X, Y, and Z? We'd love to hear that. And as we mentioned, we do have current funding from DEC to go over this territory and try to improve what we've done. So we are very interested in questions and feedback at any time after today as well.
Thank you, Peter. I think that's a good point to conclude on today. Thank you, Jenny, as always, for all of your time, expertise, efforts, commitment to this work, and great presentation today. As I mentioned, this meeting is being recorded, so the recording of this meeting will be available on our minutes once I get those done, and the presentation will also be attached to the minutes as well. So thank you again, and Gail, I think if you're ready, we can move on to the next point in our agenda.
Great. Yeah, I want to thank both Peter and Jennifer. Just fantastic. A lot of work to do, but great start. All right, we're going to move on to reports, and we'll start with the voting members. Anybody, voting members, have any comments, anything they want to add? Please speak up now.
Yeah, this is Erica. I just wanted to mention something quickly, if you don't mind.
Please.
So I wanted to just say that we've been working, and I know Vic's been on the advisory committee for this and mentioned a few times to grow the number of farms in the Genesee River watershed, that we've been doing a demo farm project that launched with NRCS in 2008. And we're working on 9 farms this year. So it grew from 2 last year to 9 that go across Genesee, Livingston, and Wyoming County. So doing some of the field trials this year and kind of setting those up. And when possible, hopefully we're doing some field days again. And how we might have to do those virtually as the year goes on. But this year, a multi-year project, but just wanted to mention that we've added 7 more farms this year, which is a bit ambitious, but also really exciting to kind of see that network grow across the watershed. And then just wanted to give a shout out. We're really excited that our AFT's National Climate Initiative Director, Dr. Jennifer Moore-Pissarra, is going to be one of the keynote speakers for the virtual Empire Farm Days. And so she's been doing a lot of work kind of on the topic that we've heard about today. She has created the Carbon Reduction Potential Evaluation Tool, or CARPE tool, which kind of builds upon the Comet Planner. And so just encourage everyone. I know there's some really great activities going on with the new virtual format, but just wanted to give a shout out for Jennifer. She's really fascinating, some really great background as a soil scientist, and I'm glad that she can take kind of the national perspective and share and learn also from the great work that's happening here in New York. So that's all I had.
Dave, Darren, anything?
I've got nothing.
Darren had to sign off a little early, Dale.
I kind of wasn't sure if he was still on yet or not. You want to begin on staff and or any comments?
Sure, thank you, Dale. Do we have any staff reports today? Okay, hearing none, I like to ask that question to everybody as opposed to go down the list. Just one more chance in case you were waiting for somebody else to talk. Any staff reports? Okay. Well, we gave a lot of reports at the last month's meeting, so we'll move on to advisory members. CDEA, Chaz?
Can you hear me, Brian?
Can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. So again, awesome job, everybody. Thank you so much. A couple updates. We have an erosion and sediment control class scheduled for August 6th, 8:30 to 4:30, August 7th, 9 to 12 at Saratoga County Soil and Water. So that's been a big push that that committee has been working on, and a huge thank you to everybody there, Dustin, Kelly, Jim, Jessica, Tim. They've been doing a great job. I'm sure I'm forgetting some on getting that organized. They're also working on an exam, potentially September 24th, I heard yesterday, for that. And that's our certification program for erosion and sediment control individuals in the county or in the state. We've also purchased new software to update our 4-hour class. So that's the online class for contractors to take. We're kind of giving that a makeover at some point, and also trying to streamline the process of people registering, taking the class, and getting their certificate. Because right now it takes a lot of hands-on of getting everybody situated and whatnot there. The Conservation Skills Workshop is well underway for planning. The online classes will be the week of September 14th. And right now we are scheduling a stormwater, a New York State DEC permit update class, a livestock watering class, a cropland and overflow class, a AEM basic nutrient managing and planning skills class, and basic soils. The following week, which is the week of September 24th, there'll be some remote location field visits. We did a survey to see what people wanted and who wanted what, and tried to focus some remote field visits to, continue to meet these needs of the districts, but also while keeping everybody safe. So we're working on planning the stormwater DEC permit update for the Finger Lakes, Western New York region. The ag livestock watering will be in the Capital and Mid-Hudson region and the North Country and Mohawk. The cropland and overland flow is shooting for North Country and Mohawk Valley, the Central New York and Southern Tier, and the Finger Lakes and Western New York. And then AEM basic nutrient management will be in Central New York and the Southern Tier. And basic soils we're trying to do in the North Country and Mohawk Valley and the Southern Tier. So there's quite a bit of work and coordination that's going into first doing an online class and second doing multiple in-field smaller classes. A lot of questions are coming from districts on budgets, how to plan for budgets. I know Brian talked a little bit about this earlier, but we're all kind of under that pressure for, okay, it's time to do your county budgets. Where are you? And it's really tough to make those estimates. So, that's a lot of the conversation that's going on amongst districts right now, on top of, I think everybody's hunkering down and working on field projects and construction and hydroseeders and no-tills. So I know we've had a huge boom in our hydroseeder business this year. Everybody's getting out and doing projects and whatnot. So it's kind of interesting. I've also been working with NYACD on getting their Zoom account set up, because they're going to be doing a virtual business meeting this October rather than their in-person meeting and classes, just because of the situation that we're in. And so Blanche and I have been working on trying to get that all sorted out and figured out, and we've upgraded our Zoom account a little bit to accommodate. There's a lot of districts using it for board meetings and various other subcommittee meetings and whatnot. So it's working out really well. We're also exploring new platforms for classes like iSpring and WebEx also for some opportunities. So it's really nice to see districts pulling together and everybody's working on a lot of different things. I can't tell you how many districts are officially open. I think that's still kind of out and about. I think some of us are doing the best that we can. Some are still reduced staff. Some are open, and some are still co-located. So it's a challenge with NRCS still being mostly in phase 1. So, any questions for me? I think I hit most of it. Dustin, did I miss anything?
Sorry, I had to find my mute button. No, I didn't have too much to add. The class that we're having in Saratoga County for erosion sediment control, I believe, has 5 or 6 already signed up. We need 10 to hold it. So I don't expect we'll have a problem getting that. And symposium planning is going very well. I want to thank everybody that participated in the Zoom meeting to plan all those classes. It was, I thought it went very quickly. Everybody was prepared with course suggestions and offering to help. And our plan is this will all be over by then, and we'll have a great in-person symposium for March of next year. We'll see how prophetic that is, or if I'm just kidding myself. We'll find out then. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Thank you, Chaz. Thank you, Dustin. Hopefully we find out before then. But again, I appreciate all your work and leadership, the entire CDA board, and working with districts across the state, and working with the committee and the partnership. Thank you. I might ask you to summarize a bit of that report, Chaz, for my minutes and my note taking, but that was a lot of information. I appreciate it very much.
Oh yeah, sure, no problem. I got it all chicken scratched on a notebook here.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Moving on, DEC, anything to report?
I think Julie had to get off, Brian.
Okay. I saw Asim was on earlier. Is Asim still with us, DEC? Okay, moving on. Agriculture and markets, Tim?
Hi, Brian. Nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from Ag and Markets with us that has
Nothing to report, Brian. Sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, there. No problem, Asim. Thank you. Okay, I believe Stephanie from Department of State said she had to sign off as well. Anybody else from Department of State join us? Okay, Department of Health. Paul, Morgan?
It's Paul. Nothing in particular to report other than the usual statewide, budget issues that the city of New York and counties and towns, everybody's going through right now. The other thing I wanted to say was that it was a great presentation today. I think it's provided a really a lot of great things to talk about in the future and also to think about this summer. So I want to thank you guys for that wonderful presentation. That's it for me.
Hi, this is Morgan. Same along with Paul. Budget issues that everyone's kind of dealing with right now. Thank you for the great presentation. I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Morgan. Steve Shaw, ESF.
Hi, Brian. No, I don't have any updates this time around. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from Cornell University, Brian?
No, I'm good. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. I don't know if Jennifer and Peter are still with us. Anything else?
Thank you for having us. It was really great.
Yes, thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you so much for your time. CCE, Beth. Okay, USDA NRCS, Paula. Anything to report? Okay. Dale, that concludes advisory members. Are there any advisory members I might have missed? Anything to report? Can everybody still hear me okay?
Yeah, loud and clear, Brian.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yep.
All right, Dale. So that concludes voting staff advisory. Conservation districts on the line today. Anything to report for the state committee? Questions, comments, observations? Just go ahead and take your phone off mute and go ahead.
And one thing that Christine just let me know is that the CDA golf tournament is actually on August 6th. So everybody start getting those teams together.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
I've ordered good weather.
Oh, good.
Gotta have some entertainment. Come on.
There you go. I appreciate that. And thank you, those using the chat function as well. One more opportunity for districts to report to the committee. I just want to thank everybody for signing on today, thanking the districts for the participation. The one real positive to having these WebEx meetings are the amount of people that have joined us, district partners and others. It's really been great to have you through the course of the last 3 months participate at state committee meetings. Any public comment from anyone else that's joined us today?
Looks like that's it, Brian.
Okay, I think so, Dale. We're all set
Next
Yep.
meeting.
We generally do skip the month of August. I think we can do that with what is in front of us the next few weeks. Staff are planning to have a TAC meeting again in August to follow up on some of the points of discussion we talked about at the last month's meeting, the recommendations that we're working on. I want to thank Chaz again for her leadership in putting out a survey to districts on a lot of the topics that the TAC continued to discuss. So we will be following up on those items, such as the engineering versus conservation discussion that Tim is leading, the TNP requirement for waste storages, as well as the catalog revisions. All of that will be featured at the next TAC meeting. We will have recommendations to make to the committee when we meet again in September. And as Bethany mentioned as well, we should have the round 26 Ag non-point source ranked list for presentation and approval in September. So Dale, I would recommend third Tuesday in September, which is a little earlier in the month. That's the 15th. Does that work for voting members that are still on the line with us today? And I can always follow up with Darren.
That's with me.
Works good for me.
I'm just looking at my
Erica,
calendar. I think that looks
okay, thank you.
for me, but I'll let you know if that's not the case. But I think
Okay, great. Well, we will tentatively schedule our next meeting for September 15th. I am going to work to get these minutes out quicker this month. So the next committee, the next email that has to do with committee meetings will contain the draft minutes so that they're out there for everybody, and a save the date for September 15th, but I likely will not be working on an agenda until after the TAC meeting, which I believe Bethany is scheduled for August 25th?
25th, yes.
Okay. So stay tuned for a state committee agenda, but again, I will put the minutes out and save the date for the next meeting in September. I'm going to also go out on a limb and say that it likely will be a WebEx type meeting again in September, but hopefully later in the year, in the fall, we'll have an opportunity to meet face to face somewhere in a large conference room.
I agree.
But,
anything else, anyone? Well, then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for participation, and it was a great presentation. Really enjoyed it. Great start. Have a safe summer, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.